Live on Zoom. Okay, Rob, we are to the point on our agenda. They've extended to the rules so they can work until midnight, and that was unanimously approved. And now we're at the executive session relating to the mayor's job performance. And I'm going to let the council and you chat.
Sounds good. Thank you for the update.
We need a motion to go into executive session at this point.
I think my understanding procedurally is that we still need a motion. I guess this is where we need your advice. On our agenda is to have an executive session. The mayor has stated that he would like it to be open to the public. Do we still make our motion to move into executive session and then he has the choice to make it public, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So there's two pathways here. One, you can avoid the executive session motion practice if you want, because the mayor has expressed his objection to go into executive session, so you can stay in public if you want. Or if you want to go through the formalities of it, you can make a motion to go into executive session, see if there's a majority vote. And then if so, then the mayor can formally object at that point. Either way is appropriate.
And if the mayor objects, do we stay live on the record, or do we go into a closed executive session?
Yeah, thank you. So the mayor has the right to object and to force a public discussion, so it would stay in public. And I'm still learning the culture, but that would mean that the doors stay open and the YouTube stream stays live.
Thank you.
I would like to first publicly object to the executive session and any session related to the mayor's job performance without an official evaluation. If the intent here is to evaluate my job performance without an official document or evaluation or any such information related to this proposed executive session, it is against our charter, I believe, and against our rules and against executive session material per the state law. But I'm thankful that we have an attorney here to be able to help us navigate this very interesting position we're in.
Okay, I don't believe that's accurate, but that's beside the point. This executive session was not called as a job evaluation. It was to have a discussion with you about the way you are performing your job and how that's affecting our city and our employees. It's not a job evaluation per se as a formal evaluation. It's a discussion with you to say, please do better. That's what we're trying to do here.
Based on the mayor's objections, we should go through the formalities of voting into an executive session and him objecting to it to remain on the record.
And Rob, I don't know if you have a copy of our agenda, but the executive session is executive session mayor's job performance.
I'm just pulling it up right now. Thank you.
So this is Santa Claus, Councilman Santa Claus. I move to go into executive session for mayor's job performance, consistent with AS 44.62.310C1. This council by majority vote may recess from a public meeting, work session, or other gathering of the council into executive session if the council considers no business during the executive session except those subjects mentioned in the motion calling for the executive session, and the motion includes these two elements. Two elements that are applicable are subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation and character of any person, provided the person may request a public discussion, as the mayor has, and also subjects that by law, city charter, or ordinances are required to be confidential. The council should not take official action in executive session. The executive session shall be attended only by the voting members, the council, the city clerk, and by other such persons as the mayor and/or city council shall deem necessary. Personal or private recordings of the executive sessions are prohibited. However, the mayor has expressed his wish to have this session public.
And I would second the motion.
And on the motion to go into executive session, Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Rolfe,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mayor Church.
I've already abstained and hand the gavel to Pro Tem Brandt, so I won't be voting on that. But
Under our,
per our code, it would be for the prevailing side if I choose to abstain.
That's not how the code.
it's a yes
or
vote. If he
you-
chooses not to
okay.
vote or refuses to,
That's
it's
fine.
entered as a yes vote.
I would also like to state my objection to the executive session, which is my right, and request a public meeting. This is a witch hunt, if I may say. And any one of you could have come into the office if you had an issue with my job performance and sit down and talked with me, similar to the way your husband came and sat down. We had a wonderful 2-hour discussion
I've
about
had
the chat GPT.
Conversation as to what
records
his was
request.
and listened to his recount of it, and frankly would have walked out after your answer to the first question because it wasn't productive at all because you refused to answer why did we have to file a lawsuit. That's besides the point. It's out of order for this discussion to occur. We're in executive session or public session to discuss what the motion was about. So the maker of the motion has the first right to speak. So Santa Claus should be the one, Councilman Claus should be starting this discussion.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, you just got through saying that the council members should make an effort to come in and see and talk with you and about several subjects. You and I have had discussions before personally and also out in the parking lot here. Mr. Brandt and I, Councilman Brandt and I, Mayor Pro Tem Brandt and I have had discussions with you. And the reason I think, just speaking for myself, that we have discontinued that practice is because you flat out lied to me and you also lied to Mayor Pro Tem Brandt right to our faces. And that's kind of somewhat discouraging as far as making us want to come in and talk with you, to make a long story short. So to get this off and going, having to do with the mayor's job performance, not necessarily the evaluation that you were talking about. There are things that I want to address as one of the sponsors of this. Is one thing that came up during our regular council meeting just a little while ago was you're not complying with North Pole code, whether it's regarding the Chat GPT issue or bed tax committee. Some of that was spelled out in the lawsuit and the settlement. Also, another issue, and you're welcome to respond to these however you like, is, in my opinion, and based on what I've seen, and also what people right here are willing to testify to, whom we've invited tonight, is a toxic work environment. And it's been very intimidating to female heads of departments here, and it kind of has crimped their work style, so they have to work from home. They feel they have to, and they have good reason to, at least in my opinion.
May I call a point of order because we're
Sure.
it's getting into confidential information. And Rob, is it possible? Could you weigh in on this? Is that
Actually, before Rob weighs in, I would like to ask Councilman Claus to explain the lying that he just accused me of publicly to yourself and to Councilman Brandt. If you wouldn't mind explaining exactly what you feel I was lying about so that I can address that, and then I'll move on to your second topic, sir.
Before we go any further, I do believe our attorneys should weigh in here. I don't feel comfortable talking about a lot of this stuff on the record on YouTube.
If you can't talk about it in public, sir, you shouldn't talk about it at all.
So
In the
So
true
I-
May I
public
get a point? May I
transparency,
get a point of order? So it's okay.
transparent, be transparent, sir.
It's okay if, and Rob, please correct me if I'm wrong. It's okay to discuss items about the mayor because the mayor wants it to be public. But if they're going to get into talking about other people's confidential information, those people they don't want their reputations tarnished and they don't want it public. And is their reputation not being tarnished if it's being talked about? Am I making sense? Is that?
Through the mayor pro tem. So let me see if I can help provide a little guidance here. This discussion is public, and you can, because the mayor made the objection, you're free to talk about the mayor, his job performance, and any specifics about him at this meeting in public. That's completely appropriate. However, there is a thin line for other employees. So no other employees may be mentioned by name, or other people whose reputation may be tarnished, but especially other employees, because those employees' records and personnel records or discipline records, depending on whatever they are, those are confidential and those are required to be confidential. However, you can, as Councilmember Claus was describing, you can generalize and talk about other employees without specifically naming them or being able, or giving enough information to specifically identify them. That's appropriate as long as it's general and not specific to an individual that could be identified. Does that help?
That does. So, Mr. Palmer, the problem we're having in the city, you're well aware of a lot of the problems that we're having after reading through the ChatGPT logs. But beyond that, there are a lot of issues with between the mayor and the rest of the staff. And the reason for this executive session, if I'm not mistaken, that was called, is to try to basically ask the mayor to quit treating our staff the way he is, without being able to go into specifics, because our city is so small. Anything that we say, anybody would automatically know who we're speaking of. And I feel that because their confidentiality will be, given up basically by us discussing this. I'm not sure how much we can discuss without being in a closed session. Because,
Sure.
like I said, because most of the things that we have to talk about tonight are personnel related.
Sure, understood. So because of the state law that allows the mayor to require the discussion to be in public, the discussion has to be in public. So if you can't articulate specifics about individuals or generalize who they are, then you'll have to avoid that specific example, but you can definitely talk about topics, and that may mean that some of the examples are limited.
Thank you for that. Councilman Claus, when you accused me of lying to you and Councilman Brandt, can you please describe the exact conversation that happened that you were claiming, sir?
You were talking about two staff members here and completely mischaracterizing conversations you had with them without me identifying those staff.
I understand. What is your proof of the mischaracterization, sir?
The easiest way to prove it is to have people testify or are willing to testify, but I don't think once the meeting became public that they are interested in doing that, whether or not an attorney is present.
So it's he said, she said, you have no proof to that whatsoever.
Okay, so
Is that correct?
I was
That's
in one of
incorrect
the,
because both of us can confirm what we heard from
Yeah.
you. And there are other issues before we get off on that.
Right.
There are things like what you tend to do here without mentioning other names, things like video tracking people's hours, despite not even having a schedule of your own. You say it's between 8 and 10 a.m., but I've hardly ever seen you in here between 8 and 10 a.m., especially unless it was the first month or two of your job here. Um, Interference with certain writing, well, it has to do with HR matters, so I'm not going to go into that. Um, and you sort of do this micromanaging thing where you're doing things like changing the title of the CFO to some other like city accountant thing, and reducing the requirements for somebody to take that position, although it's very important to the city, especially regarding finances. Um, I noticed in the chat GPT, there were references to private and personal issues which weren't specified, even though those are public records that the public has a right to know what you were talking about in this chat GPT garbage. Um, you've tended to usurp department heads' authority by circumventing them to get to people that they supervise. Um, you claim you have certain amounts of mileage and you're claiming compensatory time. You're doing all sorts of other stuff that you refuse to let other staff members do. So you're holding them to a completely different standard from your own. So one of the things it's sort of compelling city council to look at is having a city manager so that every 3 years, whoever comes into office of the mayor, we don't have to ramp up everything and have this steep educational.
I'm sorry, point of order. That has nothing to do with the mayor's job performance, sir.
It does have to do with the mayor's job performance. If a mayor came in and didn't have to do the regular city management part of it, the mayor would be fine. The mayor could go around and do the glad handing and other stuff that many mayors do while a city manager actually runs the city. And in this case, the performance level that you've exhibited here is inadequate for running this particular city. It's created a very toxic environment here, in my opinion. And without going into personnel issues, I'm constrained in what I can say. There are staff members who are present. If they wish to speak, they can, but I'm not going to ask them to because I don't feel that their identity should be exposed publicly. The only other way for them, aside from doing something like this, like an executive session, which is not public, their only alternative is to sue the city, to sue you personally, and file ethics complaints, et cetera, which they're willing to do because they can make those complaints public. That will be a matter of public record. So we were affording you an opportunity in a private executive session with an attorney, since you wanted one present, to discuss all of this. So what you're doing is putting the city at risk of major, in my opinion, lawsuits and putting yourself up for ethics violations, which could have been completely precluded by having a nice private executive session where we could discuss these matters.
Okay, if I may, Councilman Claus, thank you for that. I'd like to dive into the video tracking hours. I took some notes while you were talking because you've accused me of a lot of things. Video tracking hours. So when a subordinate of another employee says to me while I'm approving time, which is part of my position to approve department head time, no different than any other department head approving their time, I heard it more than once from a subordinate that my boss wasn't here that day. I'm not here all the time. So I went back to the record that doesn't lie, to the video that we have here from Long. And I asked an employee about that, and the employee's response was, no, I was here. And I said, okay, would you mind showing me where you were here, which happened, great. That's okay. That's the reason why we have these systems in place of approval. Interference with certain writing.
Before you move on, I just want everybody to know our department heads are exempt, FLSA exempt.
So am I, sir.
I understand. I understand that.
So am I.
So please let me finish, Larry. So when you say that you're claiming that they only worked so many hours that week, they were working from home. Because of you, they were working from home. And so they don't have to prove hours because they are FLSA exempt. So if they work 1 hour during that week, they get paid for that time. So when you were tracking them and saying that, and then you refused to pay them, they had to get our attorney involved to get paid because you refused to sign their paychecks. And that cost the city hundreds of dollars. It was unnecessary.
Let's dial into that if you don't mind. I haven't ever refused to pay anything or anybody.
You absolutely refused to sign their paychecks, Larry, and they had to call the attorney, and the attorney said, pay them.
I'm sorry, I have never in my entire time here refused to sign paychecks.
Okay,
I
will
have
say
questions.
that
I'm sorry,
is,
sir, please. This is my
blatant
time.
falsehood.
I have never not signed a check that has come to me. I've asked questions, which is my job to do. It's my job to ask questions. It's my job to make sure that if you worked, you get paid to work. What you were referring to, sir, is when I questioned an employee about their time card, they added additional time to their time card and then submitted that time card. And that is when the attorney got involved because I made the phone call to the attorney and said, how do we handle this situation? Okay.
Okay, I am going to say that is completely false.
And
That is not what happened, Larry.
how do you know that is not what happened, Councilman Brandt?
I was here through it all and had to listen to it all and spoke to everybody. And
Who, sir?
I can't say that, and you know it.
And you know it just as well as I do. You can't prove
I can't,
what you are
say
saying
on the
right
record
now.
because those employees, we will talk about it off the record, but those employees do not want to be named publicly. They were more than willing to have a conversation with you in a closed executive session, but for you making this public, this is all going to be a complete waste of time because we cannot get into the specifics this evening that we need to get into to make this city better.
Actually, sir, it's not a complete waste of time. So video tracking hours. Councilman Claus, you also mentioned interference with certain writing. Would you mind addressing that and explaining what that means, interference with certain writing?
Or things like the bed tax. You
Okay.
made some changes to the bed tax, and recently we've had bed tax meetings, as you know, since you were there.
Yep.
Although you're not required to be there, neither is any other council person required to be at those committee meetings. You decided at this most recent meeting, or the meeting before this most recent meeting, to start off the committee meeting saying that those present for the committee were supposed to elect their own chairperson right then and there. In our code, it says you are supposed to appoint the chairperson. Little things like that, sort of like meddling in stuff that which you're not fully informed for some reason. We've had a code for a long time, and we keep bringing these things to your attention, and you don't take our advice.
Okay, let me just stop you right there and let's try and address one point at a time before you go any further. So during the discussion of committees, Mrs. Rolfe's suggestion, I read the code just like all of you when we talked about committees while I was on vacation. Ms. Rolfe's suggestion was, and I believe it goes something like, it doesn't really matter who the mayor appoints or whether they appoint it themselves. It's okay. So in that committee meeting, I listened to the minutes and I said, it is my job to appoint a chair, but it was also suggested that I allow the committee to appoint their chair in that discussion.
That did not happen.
The discussion that occurred was that there were 8 members named. Our
Right.
code only allowed for 7. And if we were going to remove somebody, it should be you that was removed, because in the email that you had sent me responding to my question about committees,
Correct.
your statement was that any council member could come and participate and be a voting member. So since you would have the right to remain as a voting member if you chose to attend, to make it meet code and be 7 members, you were removed from the roster. That doesn't negate your requirement to name a chair, because even with yourself on there, you had not named a chair.
I agree.
And during that meeting,
agree with
I
you.
brought
I-
up the fact that
Oh.
no chairs were named for any of the committees. And
Okay.
you were absent. I was running the meeting at that point, and I said, I do not feel comfortable naming a chair because I have not talked to any of them. So we can vote to pass the recommendations for the members, but that you would still have to name the chairs. And that is what we agreed upon.
And it was also in that meeting that it was discussed that we allow the chairs to be elected from the body.
That was not discussed during that
It-
meeting.
Councilman Brandt, it was discussed during that meeting. That was the meeting of January 5th. And we can go back and watch that. I come to these meetings and I go back and I rewatch the meetings, because words matter, actions matter, motions matter. And that's the reason why I decided to do that. And the bed tax committee elected their chair, similar to the way the ethics committee elected their chair.
Code requires ethics to elect their chair, and code requires you to name the chair to bed tax, which you're admitting you refused to do.
I didn't refuse to do it. It was
No,
based,
you
it
just
was
told me
based
you put it
on
away based on
a discussion that
which you
council
think you
had
refused to do it.
in an open meeting. And then interference with certain writing. Let's address that when it comes to the bed tax. Since every single committee member and council member showed up to that, my concern for bed tax was the fact that we had a quorum of the council at a quorum of a bed tax committee meeting that would then revert that piece of business, which is the resolution, back to council for you to decide. So we had a quorum of the bed tax committee. We had a quorum of the council in the audience discussing business at a committee level that then would have to come back to the council to discuss and vote.
And that's perfectly allowable and by our code. In our code, each member of council is an ex officio member, a voting member of the committee. Okay. It was properly noticed as a committee meeting,
Correct.
and we attended as committee members, not council members at that point.
Technically, we attend as council
Well,
members. We
right,
have the
but-
right to vote and participate as committee members. And just as a point of clarification, the whole council wasn't there because Mr. Schuster did not attend the meeting on Monday.
He didn't attend the meeting on Monday, which is correct, but he did attend the meeting on Friday. And both bed tax days, we had a quorum of the council at the committee level.
That's fine. I
Makes-
just want the record to be clear who
Right.
attended on what days, because I attended on Monday. I was unable to attend on Friday because I was with my other child out of state. So
Right.
But there was nothing wrong with that, Larry. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So instead of, so you called it a pseudo council meeting, which there is no such thing.
Actually,
Yeah.
if you had voted, and I
Not a
called Rob
single one
about
of us
this,
Took a single vote.
because if you had voted at the bed tax committee meeting and approved that, my concern for that was that that would be approved at a committee level without ever coming back here for public discussion because it was voted on by a quorum of the council at a committee meeting.
The committee
That
makes,
still only makes it a committee action because you can only take committee actions at committee meetings because council members have a right to attend committee meetings and vote at committee meetings does not make their vote as a council member make it council approved.
and the committee makes a recommendation to council, and it comes to council for approval and a vote. Okay, so that makes it all proper. All of this was explained to you by other council members and our clerk in great detail. And I'm sorry you didn't understand it, but we have one of the most qualified clerks that we have ever had. We went through 7 clerks before we got to her in the last year, before she was hired. She has 5 years of training, 10 years of experience. She knows what she's doing. We have an extremely qualified deputy clerk. If you would just rely on our department heads to do their jobs and advise you properly and listen to them, your job would be so easy. You would have almost nothing to do, Larry. We have 5 department heads that have decades and decades and decades of experience. You came into this job through no fault of your own with 0 experience whatsoever. So if you would just listen to the experience that we have with the employees in our city, everything would go a lot smoother. We don't have a single department head that is not overqualified for their job.
So, Councilman Brandt, I do listen to department heads. Unfortunately, I'm sad that you don't hear that story or that narrative, but I do listen to the department heads. I would like to circle back around to changing the title of the CFO position to city accountant position, because I think that's super important. In code, and in charter, it states city accountant. It also says finance. The only place it mentions CFO or the CFO position, which was the chief financial officer, is in the pay scale. Nowhere else throughout our entire code does it mention chief financial officer other than in the pay scale. How can we hire a CFO based on pay scale alone when our charter and code states it's a city accountant? And how did that position go from city accountant to CFO without an ordinance change or an official action by the council?
Larry did something similar to another department head when they were applying for a job here. And this, in my view, based on a discussion you and Pro Tem Brandt here had about this particular individual, what they were offered and how stupid they were to take a lower offer because of what you misrepresented to them. So you have that to go on.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me address that before you go on to another subject. I'm almost out of paper here, Councilman Klaus. So the discussion about that certain department head was an email that came after this department head had been here 2 months and requested in an email a pay increase after 2 months. Mentioned a certain dollar amount 3 different times based on other jobs that had been put out onto Indeed requesting a pay raise after being here 2 months prior to a 90-day evaluation. I personally think that you should earn your job as you move forward. You can ask, and there's no harm in that. But to request to go from a certain dollar amount to a much higher dollar amount 2 months in stating I've proved my worth, although I don't disagree, is not a professional way to go about dealing with business.
And I will say that that is not at all what the email said. Not even close, Larry. You're
That's
misrepresenting.
actually,
I've
that's
read
public
all of-
records.
I've
So
read all of the
anybody
emails.
who wants, anybody
That
who
is
wants
not
to request
public
that,
because that is personnel issue.
actually, it isn't a personnel issue.
That I
It
have
it is a
read the-
public records request and is public
And-
records requestable. So
Then it will be completely redacted because it is a personnel issue. But I have read the emails and you are misrepresenting what you're stating here tonight.
I am not actually Councilman Brandt, and I would ask anybody who really gives about this and would like to know the truth to public records request that email as it pertains, so that we can get the truth and the truth can come out. Um,
Well, I'm a firsthand witness, Mayor, because I was sitting right next to Mayor Pro Tem Brandt when he was councilman back then. And I was pro tem, I believe. So at the time, you had mentioned that this particular individual's predecessor had earned substantially more. It was a different pay grade and some other stuff.
Correct.
And then this new person coming in was misinformed about the previous situation and not given enough information to make a reasonably good decision regarding whether that they wanted to even apply for this position or pursue. So they relied on your misrepresentations and settled for a lot less than they should have. in his
Councilman
opinion.
Claus, there was no misrepresentation. We're all adults here. And if you choose to do a job for $20 and someone else chooses not to do the job for $20, the person who's willing to do it for $20 is going to get the job. I can't control what a person is willing to accept. It was a fair offer that was made under a fair discussion. I had many, many discussions about how interesting the job was going to be because I had assisted in that job during the absence. And I can't help it. How does that fall on me that somebody accepted a job knowing exactly what they were going to get with accommodations under the request? How does that fall on me that I did not do my job appropriately to hire a qualified department head to do their job?
You misrepresent and tell somebody who's applying for a job that their predecessor got, let's say, $50. And you're saying, if you say they got $50, when in fact they were getting $100, if the new person coming in figures, well, the predecessor only got $50, I'm being offered 40 because I'm new, without knowing that the predecessor got $100 an hour for doing that, that's on you, not on the person you misrepresented that to.
I do want to say that the conversation that Councilmember Claus is talking about, we had right there in your office, and you told us that this new department head came to me and demanded a pay raise of $50,000 a year or a letter of recommendation. And now let me finish, Larry.
Actually, just
Now,
be
no,
very
let-
careful
let me
about
please finish. And
how close you
me-
get.
You told me and Mr. Claus that he demanded this pay raise or a letter of recommendation. And I said, yeah, I don't think that's appropriate. That person's only been here a couple months. So I went to that person and I said, I don't think that it's appropriate to ask for a pay raise after only 2 months. And he said, whoa, 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 that is not what happened. And he pulled up all the emails and he showed me exactly what he said to you. He said to you what Councilmember Claus was saying here, that he felt that you misrepresented the job because he found out what the former person was being made and you lied to him about that. And he never once demanded that salary. He was just telling you that he felt slighted because he felt that you lied to him. And then also, you were the one that recommended the letter of recommendation. You told him, basically, if you don't like it all, I'm glad to sign a letter of recommendation. He did not come to you demanding a raise or a letter of recommendation. So that
sorry.
is what he is saying, that you misrepresented everything. Okay.
Per the email, it was very clear and evident what he requested, and I certainly did. I have no harm in someone wanting to better themselves if that was that department head's decision to go and better who he is. I have no harm in writing a stellar letter of recommendation.
But you told Mr. Claus and I that he
hold on.
demanded a letter of recommendation, and
Hold
he
on.
did not.
Well, read the third email where
I'm
he says he
how
may.
Mr. Claus was saying that you are untruthful when we speak to you.
That
I'm
is
telling you that, yes, and I agree with him based on the emails that I've read and talking to the individual, that you were completely untruthful to Councilmember Claus and I when we were in your office, and you told us that this employee demanded a raise or a letter of recommendation, and that is not what happened.
So you read the email.
I read all the emails.
That's great. So you see it differently than I see it, and that's okay, Councilman Brandt. We don't have to see it exactly the same. I do want to circle back around, and I'll come back around to this, but never in my job interview with this department head did I ever mention anything about what the predecessor received and got paid. That would have been unprofessional.
And that is
You
what
laughed
happened.
because you laughed because you said you couldn't believe he was that stupid.
I wouldn't, Councilman Claus, I would never say that about anybody. I laugh at a lot of odd things and a lot of different things, but I would never call anybody stupid for accepting a job. I would like to circle back around, Councilman Claus, to your question about private and personal issues of ChatGPT. If you wouldn't mind describing that so that I can properly address it.
Sure. In the ChatGPT logs that you were compelled by settling this lawsuit against the city about your refusal to get rid of the ChatGPT or furnish the public records, mostly to furnish the public records. And when you actually did that finally, there are items in there with the previous attorney, the law firm, that refer to private matters, but it doesn't specify what. So if it was for the city and their private matters, it doesn't say personnel matters, it doesn't say HIPAA matters, it doesn't say other things that ordinarily would be restricted or redacted. It says either personal, PERSONAL, or private matters.
Okay. So I appreciate you explaining that so that I know exactly what you're talking about. So during the ChatGPT records request, I provided my entire login to this attorney, Rob Palmer here. He had access to the entire ChatGPT history and all records related to the entire account. And I couldn't. He took care of all of that. And any of those redactions that were done or marked private or personnel issues, that was all done by our attorney, Robert Palmer, not by myself. So if you want to ask why he marked those private, he's right here. We can ask him that. And I don't know why.
line in the chat GPT report just says that. It doesn't say it's been redacted. It doesn't say anything's been done to it. So that's just how it appears in your chat GPT log from
So,
what I was reading.
A line of where it just says private. I guess I don't understand what you're saying, Councilman Claus. If it wasn't redacted, but it was marked private,
I think that had to do with your bill with the law firm, and they were billing you for private discussion. So if it was your sign in or whatever, they should have said for sign in information or access to your account or whatever.
what law
Remember
firm
what
are
it
you
is.
referring to, Councilman Claus?
I'll have to look it up again. I'll be happy to provide it to you.
I would like that because what you're saying doesn't ring through to me, and I'm not 100% certain of what you're talking about, and I'd like to address it. I think that this is great, and I wish we could have had this discussion many, many moons ago. I have nothing to hide here. The only thing that I've tried to do is the very best job that I possibly can do here and the job that I was elected to do here in the city of North Pole while following the code of ordinances of the city of North Pole. I don't know every single one. I'm learning on the job. All I can say is I'm doing my best. I would like to address the circumvent of department heads. If you wouldn't mind addressing that a little bit further, Councilman Claus, so I can speak to that.
Sure. We have a chain of command here, as you know, because you put it on your wall. Our clerk has it on her wall. It's available to other people. When you go around a department head to talk to another staff person under their purview, let's say asking them to do something that their supervisor should have asked them to do, and then you not notifying the supervisor that they did that, and on one occasion rewarding somebody for not spilling the beans, even though they did when you were doing that. I'm not going to mention names because this is an open meeting. That's what you requested. So there are all these little instances. Another person who worked here was related to you, and that entailed certain kinds of workarounds that different department people had to do because of that particular connection that was here in the city. So that seems to be the way you behave, and you've done it with different, not just one department. So this is a pattern that I see. That's a violation of what we're supposed to be abiding by. We don't, as council people, tell employees what to do because they're not our employees. We don't even tell you what to do because you're not our employees.
So if I may, you said that I circumvent department heads to talk to subordinates, which I do from time to time. And that's okay. I can ask a question of a subordinate of a department head in relation to their job task or something that they've performed and have that be okay. There's nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong with that, Councilman Claus, at all. Especially if that department head isn't here in the building doing their job. That's also an issue. If I may, you touched on spilling the beans and some sort of elusive behavior. I would like you to talk about that because the way that you phrase that, Councilman Claus, is very concerning. So if there's a way for you to reword that so you can dial in on that without
excuse me?
if you could dial in on that just a little bit so that I can understand what you're talking about without spilling the beans on who it is, I would like to know more about your concern, thinking that I give anyone preferential treatment at the city.
I have absolutely no doubt that you do that. And I can't mention the names of the people. If they were here, they could testify if they wanted to in public. So what you're doing by having this public is what I said before. You are compelling these people rather than talking with you in a closed executive session like we had once before. And
Oh, I remember that. It
Yeah.
was a disaster. I sat there and listened to a lot of shit that I shouldn't
Please
have
watch your
to,
language.
a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have to listen to because we didn't have an attorney in the room. And I won't go down that road again. I do appreciate the education that I received during that meeting, though. So thank you for that.
so when you mentioned that before, there's also that issue of compensatory time. Most people don't get compensatory time unless they've worked 40 hours a week. You're good at surveilling other people to see if they're working their 40 hours a week here in City Hall. You, if you're working 40 hours a week, as far as I can tell, you're not eligible for comp time unless you've worked that 40 hours. So there's people here, nobody signs, nobody approves your paycheck. You sign it.
That's correct.
Who's watching over you as far as mayor? We're council. The city council is supposed to protect the city from any kind of abuses. Not that there have been abuses, but if there were abuses, how would we find out? So I'm all for a little accountability, the same kind you've imposed on other people here, just like with your office hour, your non-existent office hours. You don't even tell people where you're going.
So, Councilman Claus, in your eight years here, which you mentioned earlier that you've been here 8 years, how many prior mayors have you worked for?
Too.
Okay, and were they under the same judge and guise that you're putting me under this evening about compensatory time or time in this building or hours worked or anything else related to their job, sir?
Yeah, I can tell you the first mayor that I was with for 2 terms, part of their 2 terms, always told either the clerk or somebody else here in the building where they were, how long they were going to be, who they were with, etc. Same thing for their mileage. They didn't nickel and dime the city to death. They went ahead and if they went into Fairbanks, for a meeting with the borough or whatever, they would claim it and they'd say, here's where I went, here's when I went, here's who I saw, here's what I did. There was a record of it. People
Okay.
could check. You don't apparently do that from what I can see.
I do just exactly that, sir. Today I filled out my mileage chart, which I do every single month for the meetings that I go to. If you pull the public records request book off of the shelf, you can look at past mayors' mileages and compare those to my mileages, and they're much less than they were. It's a real fact. I have to drive my own personal vehicle to these meetings because the city doesn't provide me a vehicle similar to the way Fairbanks provides their mayor a vehicle. They also provide their mayor an assistant that the city of North Pole isn't doing, nor am I requesting that. I just don't understand where you're coming up with my concern for my mileage and believing that there's some sort of untruth in the mileage that I write down.
You mean, well, things like going into Fairbanks to pick up cupcakes when you had another meeting that same day. So 2 trips to Fairbanks? I don't think so. 1 to pick up cupcakes? That's ridiculous.
So
Just as an
if
example.
if
And
I
then-
make 2
then-
trips to town in the same day, but come back here and then go back there because of the way the mayor's schedule is, you're damn right I'll charge for 2 trips, sir.
Those are
Because it's
pretty
right,
expensive.
because it makes
cupcakes.
sense.
Those are pretty expensive cupcakes. Also, compensatory time. How do you figure compensatory time? You're supposed to work 40 hours here that you're accountable for. And then if you have comp time, apply for it. Who's supervising that stuff? Who's supervising the different leave kinds of things that you're taking advantage of or cashing out or all the rest of that stuff? You're kind of like out there doing whatever. And you like to say, well, I'm out here doing this, that, and I've got meetings all over the place and blah, blah, blah. When somebody, let's say like Bryce Ward, for example, we knew exactly where he was. I would say 95% of the time, and we could get in touch with him. That was pretty fair.
Okay, I think that that's great. I love Bryce. He did a great job as North Pole mayor. I have no argument there. My mileage is fair. My hours are fair. My compensatory time is fair. And per code, if I want to sell leave that I have per our city code, I certainly can sell that. And you or another council member has to approve my mileage charges that I submit and my leave charges that I submit if I choose to sell out any paid time off that I have. I can't cash out compensatory leave. And when I leave this position, I can't take any of my vacation time or compensatory time with me, unlike other department heads. I don't think it's fair, but it is the way it is. So I don't understand. What is your argument, sir, with that?
You had mentioned to Mayor Pro Tem Brandt and me at one point, you're so inundated with this job, you were in your learning curve, getting used to the new position that you were in. Why, if you don't think it's so bad, why don't you come and be mayor? So I'm thinking if you're working your 40 hours a week here and you're, doing whatever, you also have other things that you have to do. So how do you sandwich all of that into 80 or 100 hours a week, which is what I presume you're working, because that's the impression that he and I got during our conversation with you when you were complaining about being mayor.
I work a lot of, I do work a lot. And I appreciate the fact that I get to be mayor. And anybody that has the brass balls to come in my office and sit down and say, I am more qualified to do the job, please allow me to do it, and can prove to me that they'll do it, I'd be more than happy to give you the job. I just hope you know exactly what you're signing up for. Being a mayor is a full-time job. Meetings, busy work, having to answer to everybody. I love the job. I have nothing to hide. But this is a freaking witch hunt tonight. It's unreal. You get to sit here and call me a liar for anything and everything, and just like every other government, I have to sit here and take it. I don't think that's right. I don't think the way this council is behaving is fair, ethical, moral, or just plain right. You can call me.
Great offense to that. This council.
You can call
is
me
very
out on the things that I do incorrect that you don't agree with, and I don't have any problem with that. We can sit down and have a discussion about that. I have no issue with that, any of you. But to sit here and call me a liar, to call me a cheat or a thief is uncalled for.
I want to say that this council is very cohesive. This is an excellent council. We get along great. I think we do an excellent job. I think it's you against the council, you against the city. The way that you treat our employees is not acceptable, Larry. That has to stop.
Councilman
Okay,
Brandt,
no,
no, hold on a minute.
you've
No,
been
no.
talking
No,
nonstop. Please
I
let
would
me-
like for you to tell me, please tell me how I treat our employees that is improper. Generally, please describe to me the things that I do that are improper to our employees so that I can address those one by one.
I am not going to do that because okay. I can't do that during an open meeting. I'm sorry. Because it's personnel issues, personnel related. You have verbally abused and physically intimidated our female staff. You refuse to sit down and talk with our department heads anymore. There's the department heads here in City Hall, they rarely ever see you. It's emails, if that. when Councilmember Claus says that you go directly to the, their staff instead of them, that is constantly happening. You are going over everybody's head. Just because you're mayor doesn't mean that you don't have to follow the chain of command.
I 100% agree with that.
Then please do it. Like I said before, Larry, you have amazing department heads. You have an amazing staff. We have a very dedicated staff in this city.
I don't
Okay,
disagree with
and
that.
if you allow them to do their job instead of micromanaging everybody and trying to do their jobs for them because you don't trust them or whatever, I don't know what's going through your head. No,
Let's stop right there
I
because
said
you said
no.
micromanaging.
No,
Let's
let me-
dive off into
let me
that
finish one sentence, Larry.
before you finish that.
No, let
Because
me finish
you'll throw
one sentence.
something else at me. Okay,
No,
go ahead.
this is the kind of thing this is how you treat your staff, exactly like this. You do not listen to them, Larry. And you can get frustrated, that's fine. We're frustrated. We are going to lose a lot of staff here because of you. And that is not fair to them. It's not fair to the city. It's not fair to the residents and the taxpayers. Okay? And we're just asking you to please do better. Please be nicer. Please quit micromanaging. Please let them do their jobs. Please listen to their advice and expertise.
And this is a taxpayer issue as well, because to replace some of the people who may be leaving because of this toxic environment, that's very expensive to bring people up to speed that they're replacing. So from my point of view, from my perspective, I would hate to see this city get hit with a bunch of lawsuits. You've already had one that we
Okay,
know of.
you've said that a lot, Councilman Claus. I don't know
believe-
what you're leading on to, but I appreciate it.
I want to say the reason
I-
we're
I-
here tonight.
I have to tell you that I am a little bit on the defensive this evening, more than usual. I get called into an executive session for my job performance without an official evaluation, without any sort of written form. I get called into executive session because 2 council members have added it to the agenda. I'm a little defensive because I work my butt off for this city to try and attend and be the voice of the city of North Pole for the rest of our community. And it's unfair that you come at me with accusations that are unfounded, like a toxic environment and micromanaging. I would like you, Pro Tem David Brandt, to explain to me how I micromanage at the city.
Oh, where do I start, Larry?
Anywhere you wish, sir.
Why don't you talk to your staff? Talk to your staff, listen to them, listen to their concerns. You don't do that. Okay? So, one real quick one. You went to a staff member and threw down an invoice that showed that they bought some latex gloves. And then you showed them that they could have got those they bought them at Arctic Fire and Safety, and they could have bought them for $2 less on Amazon.
I didn't
And-
throw the invoice down, but I did set it down and said,
Okay.
hey, I just wanted to bring this attention to
Okay,
you,
now,
this to your
listen,
attention that
yeah,
you could
so
save
that
money
is-
by going other
say-
places if it makes sense.
That is not how the conversation went at all.
Were you there for that conversation?
I have heard all about it from multiple people that
Okay.
were there.
Okay.
Okay.
So hearsay and a narrative that you're being told, sir, may not be the exact truth.
Okay.
Okay?
So
Do you have
everything else
another?
is-
No.
Okay.
I'd like,
I have many,
please continue.
it's just going in one ear and out the other, Larry. You're not going to listen to us. You're not going to do better. We have spent tens of thousands of dollars on legal bills because of you. We had to do HR training that was a complete and total waste of time and money for our staff and our taxpayers. Nothing has changed from us speaking to you before about this. You think that doing a great job for the city. And I'm not going to say that you're not a good mayor, but you're not a good manager of the city. And I just,
You provided
I-
me the training to be a good manager?
Larry,
No.
you applied for the job.
I did.
You got the job.
I did.
You won the election fair and square. And I realize you have zero experience managing people. And that's no fault of your own. I'm just saying you have zero experience managing people. You have zero experience in almost every job in this city. And we have hired excellent staff for every single job in this city. And for you to tell them how to do their job and go around behind their back and second guess every single thing that they do is not productive for anybody. And if you would just let our department heads do their jobs and listen to their expertise, your job would be so much easier, Larry. That's all we're asking tonight.
Okay. So the HR issues. Those HR issues have been around since Mayor Welch, since Danny, since the first HR person was fired. That wasn't something that I created, Councilman Brandt.
You know exactly which HR issues I'm talking about. We cannot talk about that in
They've
an open
been-
meeting.
Stop.
And I'm talking about the ones that started the day you took office, not
They
the
have-
ones that were before you
They
took
have been
office.
around, sir, since long before I took office. There
I'm
was,
talking about the ones that started the day you took office, not the ones before you were in office, Larry. And we can't talk about that tonight, and you know it.
so you're telling me, sir, that day one, I walked into this place and it was an HR issue?
No, I'm saying about
That's what you just said.
I'm saying I'm not talking about any of the HR issues before you took office. I'm talking about the ones that started the day you took office. I'm not saying that, I'm talking about the HR issues from the time you took office till now. I'm not talking about the issues before you were in office.
Okay. So those issues from before I took office are the same issues that are now.
They absolutely are not.
And-
Not the ones I'm talking about that you know that I'm talking about, Larry.
Councilman Brandt, they are the exact same. I want to ask you about the second guess go around behind their back that you claim that I second guess our department heads and then go around their back to do what exactly?
Absolutely. Everything. Everything with our department heads.
Okay.
The latest issue was with not trusting our clerk and her expertise, and that cost us $550.
Actually, it wasn't a trust issue. It was a question that I proposed to our attorney here about the presence of a quorum at a committee meeting on business that the council would then decide on.
And this
And-
all
and
came about
of course
because
I did.
you wanted to, I'll just say it. You wanted to force our clerk to attend a meeting that she, because you said, as the CEO, you said, of the city, I can require any staff meeting to attend any council meeting at any time for any reason, basically, is what you said. And this would
Actually,
not-
that's not what
and
I said.
this
Just
is what you
let's
said,
get the
and this is
record
not-
straight.
It was not a council meeting, and you were trying to find a way to force her to attend this meeting.
No, I was trying to protect the city
But this is how it
because
started, Larry. is what
Councilman
I'm
Brandt,
saying. Okay.
in the scenario that you were talking about, sir, if it was,
Let's
if
stop,
it,
Larry. We don't need to
if
talk
it
about this
was
issue.
a
We were
council
talking
meeting,
about-
if it was a council meeting, a record would then have to be kept, which per the change of ordinance would require a journal to be kept, which would require a video to be kept. That's concerning, because if we don't do that, then we are against our own code. Councilman Claus.
Thank you, Mayor. Our code says with respect to committee members, aside from the ethics committee, but for regular committee members, for regular committees, uh, all that's required is for the committee chair to provide notes about their particular meeting, that particular meeting, for the clerk to file. So if anybody wants to see them they just go to the clerk and say, I'd like to see those minutes that the chairperson took of the committee, period. That's all the clerk has to do with that stuff. The clerk doesn't have to be present during the meeting. Nobody has to record it. If somebody wants to record it, they can just do it on their phone and just record it and then give that little thing to the, whatever it is, to the clerk. And if somebody wants to see it or hear it, whatever, they just ask for it and boom, there it is. If somebody bothered to make one in the first place, which they're not required to do. So this whole thing about the clerk bringing it in, just what the Mayor Pro Tem was saying, that's just one little example of stuff that's not very productive with staff. I want you to succeed as well. It's very frustrating for me. I'm a lot older than most of the people on here. I've got a limited amount of time and I want to do it in a productive, spend it in a productive way. This has taken a lot of energy and time out of me, just like you were complaining about when you first got into the mayor's role. So I'm not doing this with any ill will. I want this to be a better place. I want you to lift up, you're talented, you've got gifts. There are certain things you can do really well. I came in one of the council meetings and praised you in the beginning because wanted to give you some good energy as the new mayor, spending time here learning stuff. And I'd like to see that person reappear and make this a healthier environment for everybody. That's my goal with this.
Thank you, Councilman Claus. And that same person is right here. I'm just better educated now than I was then about our code and about how the city should run and work. So I appreciate that comment. In regards to what needs to be done on the bed tax committee, you are correct. 100% correct. What you just said is 100% correct. My concern and the reason I made such a big deal out of it is because the council as a quorum was attending a committee meeting. And what you're saying then to the committee is, I don't trust the committee that we've put forth. So why do we have a committee at all? And then the business of the committee that you could vote on would then have to come back in front of you to vote on. It was my thought that had you voted at the committee meeting, even though it was at a committee level, it would have been a quorum of the council, which then could have been perceived as a positive vote or a negative vote on whatever that resolution was, because you were together as a quorum. So I reached out to our attorney for legal advice to find out. And if it was a council meeting because we had a quorum at a committee meeting, it would then trigger the requirement for a journal to be kept and a video to be kept. Hence all the emails.
That doesn't even make sense. Because it would then be in violation of OMA because it was only noticed as a committee meeting. And the fact that we as council members appear at a committee meeting doesn't mean we don't trust the committee to do what they're doing. It means that we're interested in the topic that they're hearing. In the past, when bed tax has been discussed, the only discussion that's ever occurred is how to allocate the money, not what the request for the money was based upon, just whether or not it was allocated at what points, which is why I attended to begin with, because I wanted the information. If I'm going to approve a resolution by the committee, I want to know what it's based on. And in the past, when bed committee tax had come forward, there's never any presentation provided as to why they wanted the funds, what the funds were being used for or why they chose to give the money in that way, which is why I attended, to become better educated and to be able to actually say, yeah, I agree with them. Or in this case, I did not agree with them because they weren't following the code.
And the reason I went is the same reason.
I appreciate that.
In the meeting when we first voted on the ed tax monies, it was pointed out to me by you and Mr. Skips that I did not attend that meeting. So basically, I had no right to say, who should get what. So I went to the last two meetings, so I would be better educated. And our clerk told you with no uncertain terms that the journal does not need to be kept because this is not a council meeting in any way, shape, or form. And you did not trust her with her 10 years of experience in her job versus your 0 years of experience with her job. We have wasted tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars with attorneys' fees for that exact reason. Instead of you coming to our department heads and our staff and discussing things, anytime you hear something you don't like, you go straight to the attorney. And that is not a good use of taxpayers' money or our attorney's time, or your time for that matter. Please just listen to our expertise that we have in our own city. That's all we're asking, Larry. You do not have to go to the attorney for every little thing because you didn't get your way.
And I don't go to the attorney for every little thing because I don't get my way. I truly think about the city and the
bills
benefit.
say differently.
Well, in your opinion, sir,
Yeah.
if four of us were to meet at a library, let's say we went over to the North Pole Library and we discussed the memo that our director of city services brought this evening, not noticed at all, that would be an open meetings violation if we had to discuss it as council. Why would the bed tax ordinance be any different at a committee meeting?
We're not
Because it's at a committee meeting.
No. We're not discussing the ordinance. We're not discussing the business before the committee. So if you went tomorrow and talked about the memo that was in front of us today, that's not a violation. It's already happened. If the agenda comes out and you talk about the items that are on that agenda with 4 members and you have a quorum, that's a violation.
Right. And that happened at the bed tax committee meeting where we
Absolutely not. So
Where we-
attorney have told you you're wrong. Let's just drop this.
Where we
This is
talked about-
ridiculous, Larry.
the ordinance for distribution.
How come there wasn't a conversation with the attorney after the last bed tax meeting, the original one, because there was a quorum at that one as well. There was you, Skips,
And that's when,
and myself, and
and
there was no
that's-
question to the attorney as
that's
to
when my
anything that.
concern started,
No,
when
you should
the
ask
council,
attorney then about that. You
when the
did
council,
it after this one.
I actually did it before this bed tax meeting because I was so shocked that all but one member of our council showed up to a
That
bed
is
tax
not what
committee
happened.
meeting.
And
I'm talking about the original one, when the original amount was set
the one back in,
before the old committee, the
November.
one that happened back in November. There was a quorum at that one. And there was no concern about a violation of OMA at that because 3 members of the council sat on the committee and I attended. That makes a quorum. There was no questions about anything on that one.
And that's a very good point. But you weren't voting,
she could have.
Nobody
you-
voted. This
you could-
one.
but
Nobody voted
It
on the one
could have-
Monday that drew your concern. Nobody voted on the one Friday. Nobody voted on the one in November. And if you're truly concerned about everything, how come in the first meeting back in November, when you are a board member of FedCo, you sat on the committee as a board member, and it specifically says right there in our code that no committee member shall be on a board of an applicant.
I did. And during that meeting, I spoke nothing of Fedco.
That does not matter.
I
Absolutely
spoke-
whatsoever. That
I
does not
spoke
matter.
zero of Fedco, and I spoke nothing of any allocation. The clerk was in that meeting and actually spoke to Fedco
It
in that
specifically
meeting.
says you may not be a committee member if you are on a board of an applicant. Not that you just can't speak on that particular applicant's application. You may not be a committee member, period.
So did you bring this forth when Welch had the exact same thing happen, or Bryce Ward had the
It was
exact
out of
same
council then.
thing happen? I agree.
And-
You weren't, and neither was I, but I saw it happen.
So you saw it happen.
So
and
if
did it yourself.
so if he
Can we
recused
move on from
himself,
this topic? I think we could.
if he recused himself from the vote, that makes sense to me because
So-
we're in a small community.
That is not the way it works, Larry.
Okay.
And that just brings up the point that you are constantly violating code that you know that you are violating. And it's okay for you, but not for other people.
So that
And,
isn't true.
okay.
Please describe to me where I'm violating code, where it's okay for me, but not for someone else. I believe that we should follow the code
I believe that
as
too.
close to its
So,
ability as
I
we
think
possibly can.
If we don't know of a violation and then it's brought to our attention, that's one thing. But when you go into something knowing that it's wrong, like during the budget hearings, when I brought up the fact that you according to code have to provide I forget what it's called now. I'll have to look it up. But you have to provide a 3-year list of no, a list of,
Improvement projects, yeah.
well,
I remember
no,
that from our budget meeting.
right.
Yeah.
And I said, by code, this is required. So we know exactly how much money we need in our funds for this. And I asked you to do
Right.
that. And you said, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You refused to do it.
Yeah, because we didn't allocate any money for construction.
But that doesn't matter. That's not what code says. Code says that you need to have a 3-year plan. And I asked you to do it. And you said, no, I am not going to do that.
Okay.
And that was an instant where maybe you didn't know the code, maybe you did, I don't know, but I brought it up to you and then you refused to do it. Not that you said, okay, I'll do it later, but you absolutely refused to do it. Just like the bed tax committee, when it came to the attention that when we passed that ordinance that you brought to us, that it took effect the next day. And that you, at that point, had to reorganize the committee. You said, okay, I'll do that. And then you came back to us at the next meeting and said, no, I decided not to because this committee has been in place for the year, and you gave all kinds of excuses. But you decided to break our code after it was brought to your attention and that kind of thing. The parade, fantastic parade. Everybody loved it for the hockey team. Did you get a permit for that? No, you did not get a permit. But you made such a big deal out of permits when we were going on about that roundabout ordinance. You made such a huge deal out of it. You did not want to get rid of that parade permit, period. So we left the parade permit there. Did you get one? No. But you make darn sure that everybody else has to have it. Our fire department has to get a parade permit to do their caroling thing every year. They got one. That's the kind of thing I'm saying, Larry, when you're aware of these issues, but you decide not to follow the rules that everybody else is expected to follow. Now, like I said, if you didn't know something was in code, it's a big book. I understand that. And if you inadvertently did not follow something, but you said, okay, now I'm aware of it, I will follow it in the future, that's one thing. But when it's brought to your attention, you say, no, I decided not to. That has happened so many times and it's not right.
It actually hasn't happened so many times, but I appreciate that comment. Councilman Claus, you spoke to differential standards for department heads. Would you mind elaborating on that so I can speak to that?
What did I actually say? It was a while back.
I have no idea. I took down a note that says that I had differential standards for department heads.
Okay. There are a couple of department heads that are held to a lesser degree of accountability that I can see than other department heads without mentioning names or the particular departments. It seems to be an uneven thing. And when well, it's also, I can't talk about the other one because it's also a personnel thing. But when you're giving like a recommendation or somebody's up for a not a promotion, but like a salary bump or, those little things that are built into our um, pay system, you know what I'm talking about. That's
The automatic 3% increase every year, whether you're
Well-
good at your job or not good at your job, you get it anyway.
those or just the regular little bumps for doing extra, whatever it happens to be. I think from what I've seen, they're kind of unevenly distributed and there's a pattern to it. And if I personally were in HR, that would definitely get my attention. So there are just little things like that. And I think that's what I meant by the department head differential stuff or whatever words
Okay,
are
and,
used.
and would you mind speaking to the differential that you're talking about? You said that there was letters that were written and that if you were HR, you would have a problem with it. Were you privy to private HR information related to letters that have been sent out?
I didn't say
And what
any-
exactly
I
are you
didn't say
speaking
anything
to?
about letters. What I did say
Okay.
is when I could say this. Remember that thing I mentioned before that you had rewarded, in my view, just for lack of a better word, somebody that you kind of went around their department head to do something and they did it and you didn't want them telling anybody. There's that kind of stuff.
I
that's
have
going on.
I've never
All right.
said that,
Well,
but I'm not even sure what you're talking about.
Well, that's because it's personnel and we're restricted by what we can say, especially since we have our attorney on here. I'm pretty sure he'll tell me not to go into it any more depth than I already have because I can't be that specific. But that's why we wanted an executive session where we could talk with you and have these people we're talking about come in and right to your face say, no, this is what you did, and inform counsel here what it was we might have said that you did. So because this is an open meeting and
Yeah.
because of whether it's personnel rules or HIPAA or anything else, there are certain things we can't discuss in depth. So it's very frustrating. But the idea for having this executive session was to make things and is to make things better for our city, for people who work here, for the taxpayers, for you, for all of us sitting up here, for everybody. And it gets wearing because the same stuff gets rehashed.
Oh,
And
tell me about it.
well, we are telling you about
Yeah.
it. So if this were a closed session, that's why I'm saying you're not giving some of these people we're talking about another option except to sue the crap out of the city. That's not fair to the city taxpayers or to us or for those people. So congratulations on having your open meeting tonight for your executive session. I hope it's been informative. I think pretty much everybody's learned something here. Hopefully something productive, hopefully something positive, because I would like people who might be listening or who'll read about in the paper tomorrow or the next day, whatever, to know that our intent is to improve things here in the city. And one of the ways we can do that is to having you better informed and being somewhat specific about what we're talking about. And that's been kind of limited tonight. So I'm glad you showed up for this. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're taking the questions and the constructive criticism, perhaps is a good way to look at it. for some of this stuff, and that you're being interactive, because that's something that kind of that's a practice that we would support.
I don't have any problem with answering any questions from anybody, whether it's you, all of my citizens, or anybody else. I have no problem at all with that. I think that that's what makes this great. What disappoints me a little bit is that you called an executive session based on the mayor's job performance. If your true intent was to make our city better, we would have an executive session based on city involvement, or let's make our city better, or have a discussion in private about how to make our city better, rather than this witch hunt where I sit here and be accused of lying, bullying, micromanaging, toxic environments, and HR issues that are all unsubstantiated.
When you say that you're willing to sit down and talk to anybody and answer their questions, it's a lie. You heard it at Commons this evening when the first question asked was, why did we get to a lawsuit? And you said, I'm not going to answer that. So you're not willing to sit down and talk to people and have an honest and frank conversation. Why did it have to get to a lawsuit when you were told you had to release that information?
I had no problem releasing the information. I had zero issue releasing the information to a neutral third party
until a lawsuit was filed.
who can redact the information properly to protect the city.
You were told that if you just downloaded the information onto the hard drive provided,
You told me that.
yes,
Yeah.
and handed it over to our HR director, that there would be no lawsuit. It was that simple. And that she could take her time as long as if it took her 2 years to do the redactions, that was fine. That would have avoided a lawsuit, and you absolutely refused to do that.
I did, because information on there I couldn't provide to her under our personnel code.
Why did you think it was appropriate to disclose personal information that you didn't want our HR to read to a non-confidential source?
So I didn't provide any personal information, but the nature of the letters that were written through ChatGPT were of a personal nature. If as mayor, I give someone a verbal disciplinary action that is written, that doesn't necessarily need to go to the HR department or through the HR department.
Then it's personal information.
Correct.
And you've given it to a non-confidential third party.
Well, if that's your opinion of ChatGPT, yes.
Everything about ChatGPT says it's not confidential. ChatGPT says they're not confidential.
I did provide that to the attorney, and I was happy that he was able to go through and redact that. And I appreciate the entire council getting on board for that lawsuit and hiring the correct attorney to deal with it. It's just unfortunate that it cost the city $11,000 to do.
It was well over $17,000 at this point, and it all could have been
11 to this attorney.
correct.
Yeah.
But to our other attorneys, and the court costs altogether have come to well over $17,000, 100% avoidable, 100%.
That's your opinion, sir.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
You only turned over those records. You refused to turn them over to the attorney that we hired. And the only reason you turned them over was because he told you, well, your interests then do not align with the interests of the city and the taxpayers. Therefore, you will have to hire your own attorney. And within hours, you turned over the information. Only after you were told that you would have to pay for the attorney. And you didn't have a problem with the taxpayers paying for attorneys. But as soon as you found out that you would have to hire your own attorney because you were named separately in the lawsuit, that is when you turned over the records.
And that's the
Go
way you
ahead,
see
Danny.
it, sir.
Say something, okay? You sit here listening to everything that had been said, okay? I'll read you something, okay? Whether or not you understand what I'm gonna read you is up to you. If we don't correct this concern now, the community of North Pole will be in a drastic decline of its population and funds, okay? Like fleecing the city, conning, being a con artist, and running the city. You know, I've heard sitting here hearing everything you've said. Now, all of us here know that you have lied at one time or another. 1 or 2 times you have lied, okay? I am very, very disappointed in what you did. In reference of the situation of don't want me at a staff meeting, that kind of teed me off, okay? That really, really teed me off because I'm there protecting them guys as well as you, listening to what's going on because I see things that you don't see. You know, I sit here, I'm listening at you. Larry, you've been lying the whole time. I mean, you just don't make sense. You don't make sense. And the worst thing you could have done is put this crap public. People listening to this saying, what the hell is he talking about? You ain't got it, man. There's something wrong up here. There's something wrong to go through all this. There's something wrong, and I'm serious. I'm serious.
I'm serious too, sir.
Serious.
And I went through an executive session with this council before, having to listen to the anger and the angst and the despicable things that were said about me, and I will not go into another executive session without an attorney present because of the behavior that happened from this dais that we have seen, that I have felt and had to absorb in the service of this city. And I'm happy to do so, but totally uncalled for behavior.
Then stop your behavior. Please, Larry. I'm begging you, okay? You're saying this is a witch hunt. This is not a witch hunt. We have tried everything else possible to get you to do better and to be better and to treat our employees better.
Stop
This
right
is-
there.
No,
Tell me-
I am not
I would
going
like
to.
you
I am just
To
let me
tell me
stop and let me finish a damn sentence.
how to do
Larry.
it better, sir. How to do it better. How would you do it better?
When you were gone on your vacation,
Yeah.
best 2 weeks of the city since you've been mayor. Absolutely. Everything ran so smooth. And the reason why it ran so smooth is because our department heads and our staff, our entire staff is fantastic. Let them do their jobs. That's all we're asking. Okay? We have tried, I mean, from lawyers to HR to executive sessions to we have tried to get this through to you. This is not a witch hunt. It's a plea to do better. You've had 2.5 years in the city now, a year as council member and a year and a half as mayor. You've got the experience now. Okay, you can't say that I'm new, I'm just learning or whatever. You've got the experience now. You know that, do we have an excellent staff or not? Tell me right now, do we have an excellent staff here at the city of North Pole?
Yeah, we have a great staff.
Great,
I would
rely on
never-
them.
I would
Rely on
never
them.
say anything bad about our staff.
Then please let them do their jobs. Okay? That's all we're asking.
That's all I ask.
But you don't.
That's all I ask. That's all I ask of anybody. Do the best job that you possibly can.
And they do. And when they tell you something you don't want to hear, listen more. Okay? Because we have the expertise here. I'm just repeating myself over and over, and
I hear
not
it.
getting through to you.
I hear it for the third time.
No, it's about the 20th time tonight I've said that. And it's just not getting through to you. And I'm not, nothing personal against you, Larry. It's the way you are treating our staff is unacceptable, period. And it has to stop. It absolutely has to. And you think you're doing nothing wrong. I can see it in your eyes. You think that it's you against the entire city.
No, it isn't
Basically.
me against the entire city.
That's the way you're thinking of it.
Well, that's the way
And
you're
that's the way
thinking,
the
I'm
city,
thinking of it,
that's the
but
way,
that is the
that's
way
the
it
way,
is.
that's so, I listen to all the employees and I hear this over and over and over and over again, that as bad as it was under Mayor Welsh, it's 100 times worse under Mayor Church. That is not good for our city. And I'm not lying when I say that, Larry. I hear it over and over and over again from almost every single employees I've talked to. Okay. You can change that. You have the ability to change that.
So, Councilman Brandt, I don't know how many employees you have talked to quantify that statement. But that is, I don't believe is true. And I appreciate you bringing that up and telling me that. And maybe some of it is true. I'm an odd duck. I'm okay with that. I think about things differently. I don't micromanage. I know you like to think that I do, but I really believe that if you're hired to do a job, you do the job and you do it to the best of your ability. I think that's the way it should be done. So I'm not sure where you're getting your information that you're basing this on, and the employees that you are talking with. I have a hard time believing that. Whether or not it's the truth, I have a hard time believing that, because every night before I go to bed, I think about this city. Every day when I get up, I think about this city, and there's many nights, which I think tonight's going to be one of them, that are going to be almost sleepless thinking about this city. And it's unfortunate. And it's also the greatest thing I've ever done.
I move to get out of the executive session and go back into our regular.
It's not an executive session.
Okay.
So if everybody is done, then we would just adjourn.
Can do that.
Go ahead, Benny. Oh, you need to speak into the mic.
Yeah. I like to say one thing. I honestly and truly think you need to resign. I do. I honestly and truly think you need to resign because certain individuals are telling me certain things. And if I got one person that's toxic and I got 3 people over here that's going to leave because of that toxic person, who do you think I'm going to get rid of? Especially when I'm talking to these individuals, looking and seeing what's going on. Okay? He's right. We got good people here. You leave them alone, they'll do the best job in the world. Let's say you leave and let's say they want me to be mayor. I'll tell them up front, I know nothing about being a mayor. You guys tell me what you want me to do and I'll make it happen. You guys make the decision. You guys. We got one person got 22 years. You're nowhere near her. We got another person got 10 years. You're nowhere near here. Look how many both chiefs got, 15, 20 years. You're nowhere near them. You need to resign, okay? Can't put it no more plainer than that. You know where I'm coming from, what I'm saying. We need to do something as a group or we will have problems down the road. Can't put it no plainer than that. I'm finished talking.
I don't think this evening has been very productive at all. Being an open meeting, we couldn't be as candid and forthcoming as we could have been. There are a lot of personnel issues that need to be talked about that cannot be talked about in an open meeting. I would love to get into specifics, but we just cannot. I'm sorry for wasting everybody's time this evening. I'm sorry for the, $600, $700 lawyer bill that we incurred because of this. That 100% is on you, Larry. This could have been a very productive meeting, but unfortunately it was not. I just want you, everybody wants you to do better. You tend to try to make everybody think that the council is horrible. And just like, let's say that this stupid bed tax issue keeps coming up, I'll talk about that again during an open meeting. You falsely said that Councilmember Rolfe and I put on the ordinance that the bed tax cannot be used for entertainment. We did not.
Agreed. Agreed. And I
But you-
apologize to you for that.
You did not. You did not apologize to me for that. But that was a blatant lie during an open meeting to try to tell one of the applicants that it was our fault that they didn't get any money.
I
And-
never told an applicant that it was your fault that they didn't get any money.
That was what
That
you
was a choice that you made to remove money from an applicant.
No, Larry, no. When you said that we, okay, and then you also said that the change in the ordinance that required a city license, business license, was already on the ordinance. And that is one of the changes that you personally made to your ordinance.
I did. I actually made it clear because in the original ordinance, it says that the applicant must be in good standing with the city, which means you have a business license with the city.
That is not what that means.
And you
That
have
is
paid, and
absolutely
you
not.
have paid your taxes and taken care of it. So I added that to clarify that
But
ordinance.
no, you specifically told the people that were upset because you now required a city business license when it was not required before. And being in good standing with the city does not mean you have a city business license. The American Legion from out in
Exactly what it
Salta-
means.
No, it does not, Larry. It means that you're in good standing. You've paid all your sales taxes or whatever, you're in good standing. If you're not required to have a city business license, that doesn't mean that you're not in good standing. But beside the point, when you sit up here and I'm going to say blatantly lie about things like that to people, that doesn't, you're trying to make us look bad. And there's no reason for that.
I'm not trying to make anyone look bad. In fact,
Mayor Pro Tem, can I
contrary to
raise a
your
point of order?
belief, I really enjoy our council. I like the fact that everybody on our entire council has a
I think our attorney was trying to.
different point of view
Uh,
and different
Mr.
thoughts
Palmer,
about
do you
it.
have a
Yeah,
comment?
thank you. I just want to watch the time. I think we've got about a
Yeah,
minute left
we have
to
2
wrap up.
minutes here. So
Okay.
I appreciate that.
we're at
Thank you.
11:59.
Which I have said over and over again, that I appreciate the council. Everybody on the council has a different view.
The tone that you use when
Absolutely.
corrected doesn't make it sound like you appreciate the council.
I will say that the meeting we held when you were gone, we got through 170 some odd page agenda in just over an hour. It was a very good meeting. Everybody said so. And there was a comment by a woman in the audience that she said, "I can't believe how well this meeting went."
Wonderful.
And- exactly.
That's
Rob,
great.
I wanted to, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're right at midnight, so we're going to go off the air. Thank you for staying with us, and I'm going to shut down the YouTube.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Rob.
There's no move. It hit midnight.